work cleaning up after the party, but the Logan house still seemed a mess. She opened the screen door to see if the back porch needed to be rented up. She thought she might have left her wine glass out there, and there it was on the table, where Mr. Logan and James were seated with their glasses of scotch. Catching the door behind her so it wouldn't slam, Janie breezed over, picked up the goblet, and turned to go back inside. Mr. Logan's voice stopped her. "The dishes can wait, Janie. Sit down and have a nightcap with us." The air was close and warm, but there was a breeze, a cool breeze that had an early taste of autumn in it. It was only 8 o'clock, yet over their heads it was pitch black. "I really should help. There's so much to do." "You've done enough, more than enough. Have a seat," Mr. Logan said, pointing with his chin at the empty chair next to James. "It's better to arrive at the end of a fray and drink at the end of a feast. That's Shakespeare." "Yeah, Joe Shakespeare," interjected James. "He was one of our best bricklayers. Tremendous worker." "Really, Mr. Logan, I would feel more relaxed once everything is cleaned up." James stood and disappeared into the house. Janie felt like she was being pulled into another maelstrom, this time by 2 Logan men. She had to put up a fight. "I can't leave Mrs. Logan in there doing everything. It's a sin." She's just supervising. The real work is being done by her nieces." James pulled the cork out of the half-empty bottle of Chardonnay he'd fetched from inside. He smiled and took the wine glass from her hand. "Allow me," Mr. Logan said to his son. "Come here, Janie. Sit down." There seemed to be no way to win this argument. Janie took a seat and reclined against the rattan backrest. Mr. Logan took the wine bottle and tilted its neck over her goblet. By the time he finished, the white wine reached almost to the brim. It was a real Logan pour. He handed her the Chardonnay, saying, "We didn't invite you here to do manual labor, Janie Doherty." "Thank you, Mr. Logan." If she drank all the wine in her glass, she wouldn't trust herself to wash a single dish in the house. "You're very welcome. Besides, you can't deny the wish of an old man on his birthday, can you?" "Where's the old man?" she asked. "I don't see any." Mr. Logan chuckled and settled back into his chair. As Janie sipped her Chardonnay, the clouds proceeded across the heavens with grace and majesty, now covering up the waxing moon and now revealing it. A white Adirondack chair, which had served as a throne for Mr. Logan as the party had sung for him, now sat empty, its long thin feet sinking into grass that was lush and ankle high. She would have loved to have gone barefoot. It was hard to navigate the yard in heels. There were tall hedges all the way across the backyard, so you couldn't see any of the neighbors. Janie felt that it was funny that you could hear them sometimes, but never see them. They were like ghosts, the phantoms of Ardmore. The old swing set was speckled and with chipped paint and rust. She could even tell in the dark. She liked to imagine James and his brothers and sisters playing in the yard, though she could not help thinking how different their childhood was from hers. "Cheers," said James, clinking his scotch glass against her goblet. Janie hath chosen the better part. She took another sip, the tip of her tongue enjoying the wine's grapey tang. "What were you boys talking about?" "Dad was telling me about how his father ended up in Philadelphia," James said. "Yes, young lady," added Mr. Logan, "and it'll behoove you to learn something of the history of the crazy family you're about to marry into." "He started off in New York, I know," Janie offered. "That's right," Mr. Logan said. "He worked as a bricklayer in New York. He came over from County Mayo sometime in the 1870s. He was there when they were putting the finishing touches on the Brooklyn Bridge." "But he never felt at home in New York, did he?" said James. "It must have been an awful shock to him," his fiancée added, "coming from down on the farm to the big city." "I'm sure it was a hard adjustment, Janie, but it wasn't just that. He said he liked it in New York in the beginning. I remember him saying it many times. There was plenty of excitement for a young man with energy, and more than enough opportunity for a man of ambition. He looked up as if New York were in the sky. The moon was slowly being revealed, the clouds parting like a sheet of cotton wool, slowly torn in two. He swirled his whiskey and its rattling ice and tilted the drink between his pursed lips. More than enough of everything, if you ask me, Mr. Logan added. Too much of everything, Janie concurred. I don't blame him for wanting to leave. Father Sarsfield doesn't seem to mind all the hustle and bustle, said James. Nah, he's a real New Yorker, for years now. The Jesuits sent him to New York, right? Janie said. Oh yeah, they had to send a Philadelphian up there to teach them proper French. Janie almost choked on her wine. He sent Dad a nice card, said James. Too bad he couldn't make it here in person. Sure, Sarsfield is very at home up there. Father liked it up there for a while too. He made some friends and enjoyed the camaraderie at the job sites. But despite how much opportunity and fun he had, there was always this restlessness inside him. That's the way he used to tell the story anyway. Do you remember him telling it, James? Vaguely. I've heard the story so many times, I feel like I heard the story from his own lips. I heard him tell it 1,000,000 times. He always said he had this restlessness that pushed him to keep moving, not to stay in Ireland or in his first stop in the New World. Janie pictured Mr. Logan's grandfather, Seamus, working out in the middle of the East River. The wind whistling through the ropes and wires, the dark rolling waves adding a hint of salt to the air. Seamus marvels at New York, and yet, as the wind tugs at his hair and body, a yearning tugs at his heart as well. He must move on. This is just one stage of his journey done. There is another place, and it will be shown to him. The city of brotherly love was calling him, James cracked. He took a stout pull from his scotch. Silly as it may sound, that's what he believed. A chorus of crickets sang background from lush obscurity. One or two individuals hiding closer contributed long solo notes. One was particularly louder than the others, but Janie could not figure out where he was. And who's to say he was wrong, said Janie, letting the vanilla of the wine linger in her mouth and watching the drifting clouds. He certainly made a great success here. A mass of dark clouds now veiled the moon, though a few of the clouds glowed gray. Janie raised her goblet and, squinting, aligned the remaining half of her wine over the sky's brightest spot. Closing one eye like an astronomer, she pinpointed the moon's location. Sometimes it is important to listen to those inner voices, she said. Life is not always rational, especially the big decisions. That restlessness your father felt, it could have been the workings of the Holy Spirit. I think Father would have liked that explanation. He probably would have agreed with it. Mr. Logan nodded and swirled the deteriorating ice cubes in his whiskey. In fact, I'm surprised he never offered it himself. He always said it was time to move on, that there were bad omens. Friends getting in accidents on the job, a neighbor's little boy who died, rats infesting his building, the entrails offering a dim outlook. Now, your grandfather took that stuff seriously. As good as he was with business, there was still plenty of superstition in the old man. He worried that all these bad things were happening around him in New York. But he had good steady work, a city constantly under construction. Still not finished, laughed James. But then one day there was the last straw. His friend had a bad back and had missed a few days of work. And in those days, if you didn't work, you didn't get paid. No sick days or unions for those buccos. And the friend still wasn't feeling 100%. In fact, Father thought he looked like he was going to fall off one of the beams. Father grabbed his collar with his left hand one time, probably saved his life. Now, Father knew that his friend had a wife and a couple of small children, so he tried to cover for him. He slowed down his own pace of laying bricks so that he could keep an eye on him, make it less obvious that his friend was slower than everybody else. Yes, the guys still do that today, interjected James. Well, the foreman, Keating, funny that Father always remembered the foreman's name, Keating, but not the friend's name. I guess he never forgave the guy. So this Keating guy is giving Father's friend the hairy eyeball. He was always riding the guy, even on his best day. And then he started glaring at Father too, as if to accuse him of loafing on the job. And Father was a proud and powerful man, the strongest man in Moyamensing, they used to call him. He would not take kindly to any suggestion that he might not be pulling his weight. Even when he was an older man and had been boss for years and years, he felt guilty that he was not out there with the guys carrying loads of bricks in his hod. James took Janie's hand under the table. His father was now in full flight. But it was obvious that Father and his friend were falling behind the other teams. Father could not stand the man's deliberate cruelty to his friend, or any deliberate cruelty. And when Keating started giving the guy a hard time, he was more than usually sensitive about it. Father said he could feel his response to Keating before the foreman opened his mouth. But before you know it, Keating is laying into his father's friend. How can you slow everyone up day in and day out, says he. I got a problem with you every day, it seems. What's wrong with you? Leave him alone, Keating, Father said. You stay out of this, Logan, Keating shoots back. This don't concern you. Or maybe it does. Maybe you like an excuse to take it easy. Maybe you're both a couple of gold bricks. I don't want no lazy, good-for-nothing loafers slowing up the works and jeopardizing my project. Your project, is it? Father says. Precisely what part of this project is yours? It's the likes of us doing all the sweating and straining on this job, while you whine like a bitch in heat. All of it is, Logan, the foreman says. All of it. And if you want to keep working on my project, you better realize that, and the sooner the better. And what if I don't? Do you expect me to respect a man who gives the hard time to a man who's feeling poorly? Keating's face grew red, like redder than a stop sign, and his mouth started to sputter and spit. Father stepped to within 1 inch of him and squinted right into his eye. He had run into many tough customers in Connemara and was well able to handle himself. You're nothing but a bully and a coward, he said. Keating never had a chance to respond. Before an intelligible word could come out of his mouth, Father hit him with a left that threw his head back, and then a right to the jaw that knocked him on his behind. And he quit the job on the spot. He collected the pay that was owed him, and the next day boarded a train for Philadelphia. Jenny admired the moonlight reflecting in the wee remainder of her wine and exulted. People in that generation really lived, didn't they? She said. God bless him. Too bad you never met him.